I think this is probably the best time for us to start. I know people will keep joining in.
Perfect.
But I think in the interest of time, and because we did say we'd start at 4:30, I think we can kickstart this. Yeah?
Let's do it.
Yeah. All right.
Perfect. Thank you, Joe.
So maybe I can start off with the introductions, and then we'll get right into it. Welcome to our webinar.
Did you let everybody in?
Yes. Yeah, people are coming in. People are joining in as we go along.
Okay.
We're getting people joining in as we go along. That's why I thought it's prudent that we start. And today our topic is Unveiling the Power, the 3 circle models, crucial role in family business success. We're honored and privileged to have with us experts in family businesses, particularly or specifically Dr. Ron Reese, who is a PhD holder and is an FFI. That's the family. FFI is what, Jean? It's the
Family Firm Institute. It's the Global Practitioner Association.
It's the global institute, that represents academic research in family businesses. So we're privileged to have 2 fellows with us, starting with Dr. Ronald Reese, who's a fellow of FFI and has over 25 years of experience in private practice. He's a clinical psychologist and is a guru and is the person that we turn to in terms of family business. Dr. Reese has expanded his expertise beyond individual counseling to positively impact family business, industries, and audiences nationwide. His mission, preventing the destruction of both businesses and individuals. Through engaging talks that often draw parallels with beekeeping, Dr. Reese effortlessly combines education with entertainment, leveraging his empathy and insight honed in private practice to enhance organizational effectiveness and interpersonal relationships. He'll be hosting this webinar or leading this webinar alongside Dr. Jean Meeks-Koch, who's a fellow PhD holder and an FFI fellow, and is the visionary behind Positively People Consulting, a trusted resource for family enterprises, navigating complex transitions and continuity planning, with a wealth of expertise in change management, organizational restructuring, and conflict resolution. Jean guides families through transformative journeys with precision and empathy. She's been recognized globally for her insights into organizational dynamics. Jean collaborates closely with families to craft tailored strategies that honor their unique dynamics and aspirations. Beyond addressing immediate challenges, she helps families envision and realize their long-term generational goals. So it's my privilege to give a warm welcome to both Dr. Ron Reese and Dr. Jean Meeks-Koch, who for the next hour or so will take us through this very interesting topic on family businesses and the use of the 3-circle model in family businesses to ensure success. Thank you. I'll hand it over to you, Jean.
Well, wonderful. Well, thank you, everyone. We're delighted to have you here. We're looking for an engaged conversation. So let me just kind of begin. I would like to just give a little bit of webinar logistics as we go along here, and we're waiting to get everybody coming in here. So let me give you a few webinar logistics to be aware of. So the first one, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you always start a family meeting with ground rules.
That's right. Exactly. Thank you, Ron. We do. We always start family enterprise meetings with ground rules. So these are our webinar ground rules. So again, the first one is if you have a question, please raise your hand to ask your question during the presentation. If by chance we have a couple of moderators trying to watch for raised hands. If we miss acknowledging somebody, just take your mic off of mute and just, start to speak, and we'll know you have a question. Okay, so the next ground rule is use the chat feature. I'm at the bottom. You should have your chat feature, so send us a chat. If there's also questions you want us to answer, please send a chat to us so that we can address those questions. Okay, mute your mic when you're not speaking so we kind of don't have additional interference. I know there's quite a few people that have signed up for the webinar. We're excited. It is the very first webinar this year for the Association for Family Business Enterprise. So we're excited about it. So there might be a little things that aren't quite perfect in our first webinar. So we'd ask you to bear with us on some of those logistics. No video distractions. So if you have your video on, we'd love everybody to have their video on so we can see, we can interact. But again, if you need to answer a phone call or get off, please mute and please turn off your video so we don't have video distractions. So those are our logistics for the webinar. Here are a few of our ground rules. So the idea behind this webinar is it's really to come with a learning mindset. Okay, we're not here to solve your existing problems. We won't have all the answers for you. We're going to give you a lot of ideas, foundational ideas, many of them that are very new to East Africa. And again, that is a model that we use worldwide. So come with a learning mindset. Please ask questions. If you're comfortable with saying, you know, I've experienced this, you know, we'll give you some feedback on it, but we won't be able to solve maybe several years of challenges you've had. We'd have to take those offline. Hear one another and ask questions first. You know, I always like to say seek first to understand. Use a parking lot tool. If there's something that's really complex that you want to ask, we will have an extensive end of the webinar question and answer period where we can dive deeper into some of your questions and help steer you with right resources, right conversations. So you might, if it's a more of a complex question, you might hold it till the end. If it's something based on a discussion we're having during one of the slides, please, like I said, raise your hand or, you know, speak up during that time. That'd be wonderful. Again, we're here. Dr. Ron Reese and I am here. We're both consultants and advisors. We play that role. We're both been academics and both have been in practice. But we're coming to you from a very different role. We're really coming to you as a teacher / facilitator. Our role is to really help bring these concepts into your learning toolbox to help you be able to navigate some of the challenges that we experience in family-owned business enterprises. So those are kind of our ground rules, and we're going to dive in. And Ron and I will just banter back and forth. That's kind of how we work together. Ron and I have worked on families together, solved family problems together. So even though we have our own practices, we enjoy collaborating together. So with that, Ron, did I miss anything?
No, I just want to say good morning, and I'm glad to be here with you guys all the way from the United States. So I'll do my best to participate and shout loud enough for you to hear me.
Great. And so Ron is coming in from Greenville, South Carolina, and I actually I have a house in Charleston, South Carolina, but I also now have a home here in Nairobi, Kenya as of this week. So I will navigate between two continents. It's nice to be having a second home now in Kenya. So with that, let's dive in, everybody. So I'm going to start with this a funny cartoon. I know some of you have experienced my work before in different ways. And I always like to start with this cartoon because I think it's actually epitomizes a founder generation, which we call Generation 1, into the next generation and the next generation. So, you know, here's this son that has a sign that says president on his office. And he says to his assistant, I'm having lunch with the chairman, the CEO, the largest shareholder, the family council chair, and the head of the family foundation. And the assistant says, I'll make a reservation for you with your dad. How many of you, it could be I'll make a reservation with your mother or I'll make a reservation with your father. How many of you have experienced that Well, all of a sudden you're elevated to this higher position, but really your parent has not let go of the reins. They still are the primary shareholder. They still hold all of the decision making. So dad or mom is still in charge, right? And you wonder how you fit into all of this. Are you the son or the daughter? Are you the president? Are you the vice president? You know, are you a director? How do you have your voice in your decisions made? And therein lies some of the complexities. So I think it's always a funny kind of cartoon to kind of start with, because it is complex. Go ahead, Ron.
And how does the CEO, dad, and the head of the family council and the head of the family foundation, how does he question himself and ultimately decide, well, maybe I can let go of some of that?
So true. How do you let go, right? How does that person that, or that those parents that have developed this, or the grandparents have passed and now the next generation has been passed this down, how do they let go of this, you know, family legacy asset, this cherished value asset? So we're going to kind of talk about, why is this so complex? So I'm going to dive ahead, if that's okay. So we want to just start with this first question in the chat box. If you have the chat box, and you're also able, you know, put it on the chat box. And then also, if you want to, just kind of speak out loud. But what excites you about a family-owned business, a family-owned business enterprise? What are the things that excite you and make you smile? What are those things? Let's take a minute and see if we can see some things coming in on the chat board. I just saw one: strong bond and unity, growth of business and family. Absolutely. We're growing in both directions. Welcome, Jacqueline. I see you're coming in from the US. Welcome aboard. Legacy continues. Freedom of working. Having a family business gives you freedoms that you might not have any other way. Equality. Wow. There's some great ones. Very good. Any others that spark you? Able to spend time with family, right? These are some excellent ones. Family values.
Growth.
Yeah. Growth. Thank you, Hilda. David, thank you for family values. Absolutely. Those are exciting things. Those are things to hold on to as a family-owned business enterprise. What makes us so different, right? Now, how about, let's ask this question. Ryan, you wanted to take this one?
This question. Go ahead, Jean. Let's see what happens on this side.
Okay, we're going to ask another question for you to put your thoughts into the chat board.
What concerns do you have about family and business? Maybe you have 3 or 4 that you might chat about.
And I just see one with what excites you. Exciting to see a family unit growing, a brand. Yes, wow. The power of the brand that was started.
Some concerns now.
And I would say if everybody on the Zoom, if there isn't anybody with any concerns, then you probably don't need this webinar, right?
Right.
Oh, Hilda, thank
Family
you.
relations.
Family relations.
Misalignment.
Misalignment.
Yes, thank you.
Great words.
Misalignment is a great word. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Kush. Misalignment, absolutely. Like that one, greed. Oh, Dr. Ron Reese, this is a hot topic for you. You deal a lot with families with power, control, and greed. You call it the Bermuda Triangle with the sharks in the middle,
Yeah,
right?
that's right. Favoritism,
Yes,
lack of professionalism,
inequality.
inequality, just the other side
Absolutely.
of equality.
Yeah, absolutely.
Different
Any
generations
more
may
out
have
there?
changes of family, failure to understand roles.
Yeah, sibling relationships. Oh my gosh, you thought I'm one of 6, just so you know. I come from a big family. Ron is one of 4, the oldest of 4. I'm the middle of 6. We know what sibling fights are all about, right? We were
Yeah,
fighting as we were kids. Why would we not be fighting as adults, right?
it's the nature.
Failure to understand roles, role clarity, right? What is our swim lane? We know what our role is as a brother or a sister, right? An aunt, uncle, niece, nephew, daughter, son, but what is the role we play?
Inability to pass skills to the subsequent generations. Okay. Lots of
Yeah, how do you pass that tribal knowledge on to the next generation? Maybe, especially if the next generation thinks they have the skills, right?
So we got everybody warmed up now. It seems like the excitements weren't near as heavy on the seesaw as the concerns at this stage of the game. So we'll have to come back to excitements at some point.
Get you back excited. Divergent goals, absolutely. Just like misalignment of goals, right? And we're not all aligned in our collective goals. And we're going to talk about that in this webinar. Then it's very difficult to hold together without fracturing. So let's keep going. Ready to keep continuing on there, Dr. Ron?
Thank you. Thank you
Okay.
to everybody.
So we're going to talk about this concept, and I'm going to let Dr. Ron take it. There's a myth out there. Shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. So I'm going to hit on the first one. I'm going to let you, Ron, take it away, and I'll give my 2 cents where it's worth it. Okay?
Yeah, sure. This is an idea that's been around a long time, and the notion is that the first generation, or the creators, they are the first group to come into the initial wealth of the family business. They are the guys who have the idea, took the risk, worked 24/7 all the time, and they were proud of their accomplishments. Sometimes at this point, they wear all the hats, just like the president conversation in the cartoon. Oftentimes they're a husband and wife. We have more men who have spouses that are helping them out, it seems. And those are very powerful relationships that accomplish a tremendous amount in the first generation. Without them, we wouldn't have the complexities of the next generations. So we have to realize how much importance they have and what they bring to the table. But they're the creators initially. And then
we often call them, I just wanted to say this, we often will hear the term, we'll call them immigrants to wealth.
immigrants
Because
to wealth.
many of them, the wealth creators, the original founders, they didn't come from money. They created it. So they've known what it's like to not have. So they're true immigrants to wealth.
That's my dad.
Wealth is a whole new thing. Go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, well, my dad was a first generation creator, and as he would often say, all I know is work. He came from very, very little means, and managed to build a small construction company that, certainly was his. And my brother eventually became the next leader of that company. But yes, the wealth creators come from hard times a lot of times. All right, and then maybe the next generation comes along, generation 2, that would be like myself and my brothers. and they are trying to learn to spend time together. And I have been referred to many times as the sibling guy in the consulting world, because I've had so many sibling partnerships that I've worked with and consulting with. It is difficult. Siblings don't know how somehow to be grown up together in a business. There's things that still linger. If you look at your brother or sister, they're still your brother or sister first. And you may have those old messages still floating around in your head, and it takes a lot of energy to try and overcome them. I call the sibling phase really is about trying to become one for all and all for one, and becoming a team. And it means that people have to leave behind what I refer to as sibling skills, or sibling habits, rather, sibling habits, those old habits that you've had since you were children, and they have to come to a point of developing sibling partnership skills. That's a very big challenge for many. And this phase is tough. I think the transition, frankly, from first to second generation is probably one of the hardest. Jean, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think that, we go statistically back to from first generation to third generation. Basically, we know the stats worldwide, and I've been studying the statistics, and I've given some talks here about the statistics here in East Africa. So according to PwC, the statistics in East Africa are about 84% of businesses are family businesses, family-owned enterprise.
Okay.
By the time in East Africa you get to the third generation, you can only find approximately less than 6% that's remain in business. So something happens.
That remain in business in the same kind of structure that they were in generation 2.
Absolutely. So there's big attrition, and it really happens. The big fracturing starts to happen in G2. They become the feuding siblings, right?
But the second generation is also referred to as the wealth builders.
Also the wealth builders. And by building that wealth and creating that wealth also can produce power, greed. It's the Bermuda Triangle of money, power, and greed, right? As we continue to grow the wealth, and we don't, there's conflict on who's gets to do what with that wealth, and who's really built the wealth. We see a lot of arguments with siblings on, well, I built the wealth, you didn't build the wealth, which creates that conflict. Go ahead, Ron, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Jean. It's sometimes hard for me to play back and forth on these webinars. But anyway, sometimes I've had my sibling clients actually try to construct this image, and they do a good job of thinking through it. And when we can remember about it, it's pretty good. They say, Dad built a tree, and that tree has a certain amount of shade. Our job is to increase the shade of the tree. And so if we can keep our minds and our focus on increasing the shade of the tree for all of us, then it works a whole lot better. So, but the second generation is often referred to as the wealth builders. And then what happens? By the time they get to the third generation, there's a certain amount of wealth. The next generation is comfortable. This image is pretty powerful. They can be spoiled spenders, and they are natives to wealth. One of my clients once said to me, my youngest child doesn't even know there's a back end to an airplane. They flew first class all the time since she was little, so she'd never experienced the early days. And without that awareness, they can be entitled. They can spend more than people want them to be doing, and can spend away what has been created. Not always the case, however, or we wouldn't have any family businesses in the 4th, 5th, and 6th generation. Jean?
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, we call this the myth of the shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves, okay? Because it truly is a myth. It really isn't that by the 3rd generation, we've totally created a group of, spendthrifts that are really spoiled. They feel entitled. Yes. Do we have some of those? Yes, we absolutely do. But what is the truth to why family-owned business enterprises really attrition down to about 4 or 5% by the 3rd generation? So that's what we want to talk about. We want to share the why. What is the real truth of why they split apart? And this goes into this conversation about this 3-circle model. So we want to share that with you. So why does a family business enterprise implode? This is the truth to why a family business enterprise really implodes. It is not that we can't get through the sibling generation, the sibling era, and transition from G1 to G2. And it's not that we've created these next generations and generation 3 that are always just spending money, they're wasteful, and they don't care about society. Typically, that is not the case. That would be the abnormal, not the normal. Why they really do fall apart is we're going to talk about what is really the behind the scenes. So we're going to give you a diagram to watch, and we would like in the chat box for you to tell us what we see. Okay, so what do you see? How many circles do you see when I do this? Watch this again. What do you see happening in that? How many circles do you see? Take the chat box and tell us what you see. What do you see happening here? Well, describe that to us in the chat box. What do you see? Looking for somebody to tell us in the chat box, or many people to tell us, what are you seeing in that? What's happening with this?
You can share.
Pardon? Go ahead.
We can't see. Are you sharing something?
They can't see it.
Oh, you can't see this slide?
No, we can't. Kindly share.
Somebody just said I can. Nahal said he can. Our moderator there, Joe and Antoinette. Oh, we have some others that say they can see it on their end. You might be frozen or something on your screen there. But it seems like others can see the slide. So can anybody see what's happening there? How many circles do you see? Hilda, how many circles do you see? Nahal says he sees too many. Too many gives me a headache. Yes. Anybody else want to try to take a guess at how many circles are here? Let's watch again.
1 circle to 3. 1 circle to 3.
Ah, there you go. 1 circle to 3. We have somebody said 2. Somebody constant said many broken ones. Very good. Let's talk about what's really happening here. This is an illusion. So let's talk about this. Dawn said there is 1. So what's really here? There's actually 3 circles. 3 circles that are all intertwined. They're all commingled. They're all tightly bound. And then we can separate these into 3 circles, and you see they're overlapping. They each have form and structure. There's a place where they overlap, There's intricacies of a maze within each circle, right? So it's complex. So we have 3 circles with different areas of overlap, 4 different areas of overlap with complexity with each in 3 circles. This is what happens between G1 and G3. In G1, we have 3 circles: the owner circle, the family circle, and the family business management circle, how the business is run circle. There are 3 systems working together, okay? But they're all controlled by one individual, dad or mom and dad, okay? In the founder generation. If it's dad, the founder, the wealth creator, right, the immigrant to wealth, he owns it. So he is the person in that one circle. He owns it. He runs the business his way, and he runs the family. So there's no separation necessary because 1 or 2 people run it all. But by the 3rd generation, we have cousins involved. If you make it to the 3rd generation where this business has successfully transitioned into the 2nd generation with siblings, and they've worked through their challenges, and now their children, which are cousins, which would be the 3rd generation, okay, they now grow up, they go to college, or they get educated, or they come into the business, and the business continues on into the 3rd generation. Now we're talking about businesses that are 40, 50, 60 plus years old, right? There's no one person in charge of everything. We have different households. Cousins have different roles and responsibilities. Some cousins might own and work in the business, and they'll also be in the family. So these 3 circles need to have their own form and function, policies, rules, guidelines. Without doing that, without putting what we call form and structure around each system, the systems become exactly like this. It implodes. There's no role clarity. There's no decision-making policy. There's no rules around how we behave when we bring the whole family together. There's no understanding of how owners create wealth together. We implode by the 3rd generation. So that is really the truth behind why we implode, because we do not separate each of these systems, and we call them systems. So we're going to go into the model, and I'll let Ron start explaining some of the model. Okay, Ron?
Yeah, let's stay here for just a minute. You know, one of the things.
Okay, sounds good. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think one word that I would use for each of these circles, each of those circles has a maze for a purpose. And each circle, there are different needs. And those needs, and the word needs, you know, drives us a lot. They drive our behavior. So what those circles need, they're driven by ambition in the family circle, perhaps, and even in the business circle. The needs of the business are to set purposeful goals and strategies. The needs of the owners are to get a return on investment. So we're set up for these 3 circles to hopefully, as the business and the family mature, those circles become less overlapped, but they never fully separate. That would really not be, actually, I think that would be problematic for families to have a fully separated family, those circles, because they wouldn't be as strong. But I want people to recognize that the word need what does each circle need and what does each circle require in order to be robust, healthy, and strong. So if we approach it that way, we have a greater chance of being successful in the third and fourth generation.
Well said. Yeah,
There's a lot-
absolutely. What is,
There's built-in opportunity for conflict, obviously. But
yes, because we have different needs, right? Even in the
That's-
same circle. My needs for my family might be very different. If Ron and I were brother, sister, my needs for my family might be very different than his needs for his family. So how do we have alignment?
and by the time you get to cousin generation, and I don't know the ages or the maturity level of the audience businesses, but siblings being raised in one household is one thing. And then you got cousins from another household. They've been raised in a different way, perhaps, trying to work with cousins and from another household. So what are all those needs and how do they collide and how do they strengthen each other? I just think the word needs is pretty powerful when considering these circles.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ron. So the truth, why family business enterprises fail. They don't fail because we don't care about them. They don't fail because by the third generation, we have a bunch of spoiled, kids running around spending a bunch of money. This is why they truly do fail. It's this model, and we call it, this is the seminal model out there. It's been around for, it just celebrated 40 years. It's used amongst the best practitioners, I'd say globally with families. And this helps understand what we need to get to by the third generation. Each of these circles need to become strong. They need to have their own policies, their own decision-making powers around them. So Ron, do you want to head into one of the circles? We'll ping pong circles.
Yeah, let's talk about them a minute. And I would also say that any people in the audience of this have taken a great step to helping their business. First of all, just by saying, hey, I need some more education. I need some more support from people who are in the same boat as I am. Maybe I can gain one new idea that can help us move along in our family and make us stronger in our business. So I always think it's great that this type of institution and educational organization, we have lots of them in the United States too, and they're wonderful. So let me talk a minute about the family circle. Family systems, and we call it a system because when it's like a puzzle piece, when one piece of that family moves in one direction, chances are the rest of the puzzle moves with it. And there are all manners of things that we pay attention to. Power and influence, sibling rivalry, love and relationships. The vocabulary of the family system is about family and acceptance and love. It's a nurturing place. And so right off the bat, that warm circle, if you want to call it that, is a point of trying to grow our humans and set them free and let them be strong individuals. So the purpose of the circle is very different than the purpose of business. The business circle is about commerce. It's about challenge in the world. It's about survival from an economic perspective. The same is true with the owner circle, creating a structure of business that helps other families. Oftentimes, some of the dedication that goes into a family enterprise, I hear these words all the time. We sacrifice a lot because we care about our employees in the business circle. So the business circle becomes somewhat of another family. And they move together. They impact each other as those puzzle pieces move. You can't avoid it, so you need to understand it. Try to pay attention to it in a knowledgeable way and back away from it, not just be immersed in it. There are, I think in here, Gene, I think there's 7 different roles that can be played in these circles. And so it means there's a different hat, 7 different hats.
Absolutely.
Go
Yeah.
go from there, Gene, and help me out. Add a little bit to it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So I want to just jump up here into this gray circle that says ownership, right? So there are people that own shares or stocks, or your businesses might be in a trust, right? And somebody's the trustee of those, and they're following the rules of the trust. There might be the beneficiaries, those that benefit from the cash coming in from these businesses into the trust. This is ownership. So there are decisions that ownership gets to make. There are decisions that management gets to make, and there are decisions that the family gets to make. And they are not identical, family-owned business to family-owned business. We've worked, Ron and I both together, what I think we've worked in upwards to almost 400 families between our experience over our careers here. And decisions are different. What one family wants to hold on to in the family circle to have the right to decide on, another family might say, yeah, no, we don't want to have that decision responsibility. That's a responsibility that only owners make, right? So part of it is determining what decisions, what group of stakeholders make. So in each of these circles, the blue, the yellow, and the gray, there are stakeholders. So identifying who are those stakeholders. And you might have somebody that is a stakeholder in all 3 circles, okay? And they need to understand what decisions they make when they're in that circle, and what decisions do they not get to make. So one of the things in my experience here, I've been in and out of now Nairobi, working in Nairobi before we made a decision to be more firmly planted in Nairobi here in 2024, is I hear this word and I see these workshops on governance and people promoting governance, and it boggles my mind, because I think we misunderstand what governance means. So let me first explain the word governance. When we're talking about family-owned business enterprise, what does governance mean in that context? So you see this outer circle, this big circle here with the purple, okay? This is what we call governance. Governance is what are the rules, what are the policies, what are the decisions that govern each of these circles, and they're all different, okay? There's not one rule book for each circle. That's what makes family businesses so complex. When we have a non-family business, a corporation, a publicly traded company, a agency, a government agency, or the government, we have a 2-circle model, right? We have people that are in the shareholder, stockholder ownership, and then we have the management of those businesses or agencies, those heads of them, that kind of thing. And they only overlap. When you get rid of this blue circle, they only overlap in one spot. And where they overlap, okay, you have a board, a governing board. And the role of that governing board has 2 primary responsibilities. One responsibility is to oversee those that are managing, those that are managing and leading the business or the agency, right, to meet their strategic objectives, that they do it. The other thing the board's role is, it has a fiduciary responsibility, a legal responsibility to make sure that the owners, shareholders, constituents that really own that business or businesses, that they have a return on their investment. So typically in a corporate structure, that's one intersection. But now we add a third circle, and we exponentially increase the challenge areas. So we overlap, and look how many areas. We overlap between management and ownership. We overlap between the family and ownership. We overlap between the family and management and the business, right? And then we overlap. We have a triple overlap in the center, and I call that nirvana, meaning, hey, when all the three circles are moving really well and they're well behaved and everybody's following the rules that were set forth and everybody's following their roles and responsibilities and decisions, wow, we have peace on Middle Earth, right? I have not quite yet found a family that has nirvana, right? It's an aspirational goal. You know, there's always a circle that's slightly out of alignment. The problem is when one circle is slightly out of alignment, you see how it ripples its problems into the other circles. So it ripples. That ripple effect is like a wave, like an ocean wave into another circle. Well, then that other circle is going to respond back, and it's going to wave back. And if we're not careful, what we have are three circles. It's like a wicked ocean with, 15-foot waves clashing against one another. And that's what makes us implode. So there are places that we get really concerned about. So as we grow by this third generation, we really want to have developed what we call a family council, because we should have cousins. We possibly have cousins. Our family system has gone from, mom and dad to some siblings. The siblings get married. Each of those families might have kids. Those kids have kids. Now all of a sudden there's a lot of family members, right? We've worked in environments with 150, 200 family members. Well, yeah, you can't get everybody's opinion. You can't get all 200 people's opinion on something about the family, right? So we typically put together a family council, and a family council is really the board of the family. It's concerned. What's the family council's responsibility? We call this family governance. And the family council's responsibility is to make sure that the family has harmony. And so there's processes for how we help navigate through conflict. Also, how we educate the next generation, the emerging cousins, the emerging family members, the small children. How do we start educating them so that we don't have entitled, spoiled children? We have respectful children. They understand the value. They respect the legacy. That's all the job of the family governance through the family council. Now you go the opposite side, which is the board of directors. Okay. The board of directors is responsible for wealth preservation and wealth growth. They want to make sure that the wealth that has been created isn't destroyed. And they also want to work and make sure that we're continuing to grow, because the family is getting larger each generation. So we have to continue to grow. So the board needs to stay focused on wealth preservation and wealth growth. This board can't get pulled into problems of figuring out how to educate the next generation. They can't get into, family disagreements and squabbles about where we're going on the family retreat or what we're spending. They can't get involved in that. They're busy trying to support the strategy that's going to continue for wealth preservation and growth. The reason we call this a family council and not a family board is because we just don't want to confuse two titles. So if we say family board and then board of directors, we have two boards, it gets confusing. But these are both equally necessary boards, and they serve a very different purpose. And they have different people with different skills that oversee each of these. So this is
Well,
let
me jump in a little bit about, there are a couple of simple things, or I don't know, they're not simple, they're more basic, I guess, that sometimes the family system or council works with, even if it's just a routine gathering of family for the purpose of trying to understand how we relate to the business. And you don't call it a family council, but maybe you call it a family group at first. But some of the things that come out of these governance structures for each, for example, is an employment charter. How can family members be employed in the business? Very critical, because you and I, Gene, have seen times where somebody just assumes they have a job. They don't have any guidelines of how they are supposed to enter the business. And one family member says, my son or my daughter deserves a job. Well, not necessarily. So a foundational structure that comes out of some of these conversations and governance is an employment policy or employment charter. Another foundational example of something that's very useful is the ownership charter. Ultimately, who can own? So there are reasons for separating these and putting on the different hats and having different conversations, and it makes you stronger.
Absolutely, which they're governed by different documents, just like you're saying, Ron, right? Where we have the emerging family employees, many families work together to set up that guideline that then the HR group within the family businesses, they treat the family members according to the agreement of the family employment policy. That ends up being very crucial, so that there is fairness, fair treatment, and there's not equality, but there's, it's not equal, it's equitable, right? It's equitable. So different roles in the family business gets compensated differently, just like, in the marketplace. So really defining that and understanding that really starts setting a pathway of fulfilling people's needs and doing it in a fair and equitable way. So again, typically the family develops a family charter. It's sometimes referred to as a family constitution. I wanted to say a word that I've seen here in Kenya a couple of times, is people that are calling it have referred to it as a family business constitution. It is not the business constitution. So that's really not accurate. Okay. It's a document that governs the family and how the family is going to be together as a family that has commingled assets. It's not directing how the business is going to run. That's a different document. So I want to make sure that, this concept of family business constitution doesn't really exist. It's not the businesses, it's a constitution for the family. So, and then in the board of directors, you're going to have a board charter. It's going to be governed by the shareholders agreement. right? Are your articles of incorporation, whatever it happens to be, but there'll be a document that lays this out. And then there'll be a master decision-making matrix document that really outlines who gets to make what decisions in what circles. And that is how we stay together, because then we have a form and structure that allows us to have each system moving, right? It's like greasing the wheels, right? Greasing the gears that can move together. When the gears lock up, that's when we have friction, and that's where we have conflict occurring in different circles. So Ron, should I go on to the next slide? It's almost about 5:30, so I just want to be appropriate.
Do we have two other things that come up on this slide?
Nope, I think that's it for the slide.
Okay.
Oh, yes, we do. You're right, I'm wrong.
That's all right.
My error.
I tell you what, that's rare.
I know that's not true. I'm wrong. You're right. I own it. Yes. But you can see on this side is what corporate governance is. Okay. Corporate governance doesn't oversee all of the family enterprise. It oversees one half. And again, like I said, it's for wealth preservation and growth. That's its purpose. That's the purpose of corporate governance. Family governance is for the purpose of history, legacy, harmony, and education. So they're distinctly different, necessary needs to keep these three circles moving well together. Ron, I'll turn it to you.
Yeah, let me just comment on something I've experienced in the last 2 days. I've been on webinars the last 2 days with people talking about their businesses. And in each of those cases, there's been a great conversation and a description of how they have gone through the process of recognizing and setting up the governance structures that need to be in place. And it was really great to hear these young generation people talk about how committed they are to the structure. And they gave credit to their parents because their parents were wise enough to get involved with education, to get involved with advisors who could bring to the table this kind of information and help them go the long journey. It's not a quick journey. And every one of those people that were interviewed talked about, this has happened over time. It did not happen in 2 days. It has taken us years. We have committed ourselves to this process, and we are growing up as we put this in place. 2 of those businesses, one was 102 years old, one was 120 years old. 2 others were 45 and 55 years old, but they had all had such good things to say about how hard they had worked and what they had accomplished to really bolster and make their business and families robust enough to survive. The other circle that's not really here, that can't be here exactly, is time. There's an element of time that goes along with this, obviously, and it travels right beside it no matter what we do. And it has pressure. It puts pressure on us to do certain things. That's all I would add to this slide.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ron. Absolutely. Any questions that the audience might have before we move on? If you have a question you want to put in the chat box, otherwise we'll have question and answer at the end of the webinar. But if there's something, spurring somebody at this moment that you want to ask, please, we'll pause for a moment and see if anybody has a question that they want to ask.
All right.
Okay, should we go on?
Looks like
Okay, great. Okay, so we want to talk a little bit how, how do you shift the mindsets and evolve from generation to generation 1 to generation 3? What are these mindsets that we have to shift, our mindsets and our beliefs? So we want to start with the first generation here, which is, I'll let Ron pick up on this, starting
Yeah.
with the initiative of I.
Well, I think that nothing happens without an individual initiative. There's got to be some energy. Somebody's got to own it. Somebody has to have a passion for it. Somebody has to be willing to take the risk. So in the beginning, as we said earlier, there are the wealth creators. And as my dad said many, many times, despite the fact that all of his brothers worked in the business with him, he said, "This is my business." And he never let go of that, truly. But this is I created this, it's my purpose, it's mine. We all start from a perspective of self in so many ways. So it's great because it gets things going. And then we have to move, though, from that initiative of I and mine to the next level or the next category, which has to do with the second generation, and focus more and more on the power of us. And generally, this means siblings at this stage of the game. There's an us, not just I. And that's where the built-in conflict can happen, because many times there's a sibling that says, "I want this," as opposed to what can we or us do? What can us accomplish and create and our unity, and what kind of synergy do we have together? One of the critical roles of this stage is how, if it's sibling group, for example, how do the siblings figure out their complementary skills and their complementary passions to work together in the business? Because they all can't do the same thing and have the same role. They have to have some role delineation in order to become wealth builders. And as we move along in that process, then there are certain things in that stage, like a code of conduct even, that help people do that work together. Hopefully, they move into what I have referred to and Gene refers to as the wealth of we. I call it the wisdom, effort, attitude, and loyalty, and trust, and hope that goes along with family enterprise. I always like those words at the bottom because that's what I've seen in family enterprises. And when they can recognize and capitalize on the power and wealth of we, there's very little that a family-owned enterprise cannot do. I mean, there's such success, and they create such wealth preservation, innovation, and growth. The world needs them, and without them, I don't know what we'd do. So add to that.
Well, I think that's just really well said, right? Is understanding how we evolve from the very first generation to the third generation, and then the power of we that has to continue on. When the power of we then becomes the power of I again, it becomes really detrimental. So again, it's hard. And so I want to talk about, why is this mindset? So mindset and beliefs. So mindset and beliefs really sit in your subconscious. So in part of our brain, we have two parts of our brain, the subconscious and the conscious area, right? And beliefs sit in your subconscious. So oftentimes as a behavioralist, I'll get called and said, Gene, can you just come in and work on this team's behavior, this family member's behavior? And I'll just say, no. We have to go upstream, and let me show you what that means. And then you'll understand why in the second generation, it's hard to make these transitions. And then why by the larger generation, the third generation of we, it becomes even more difficult. Okay, so why is this so difficult? So this is what I call the cycle of creating beliefs, behaviors, and actions. So I love this little baby picture, right? We start experiencing experiences as soon as we're born. And many physicians will say that when the baby is still in the womb, it's experiencing things, and it can experience trauma, it can experience negativity, okay? So very early, on the first day they're born or before, there's experiences happening. And these experiences start to shape their brain. And these experiences, the patterns of those experiences start forming and imprinting into their subconscious. So a baby that has received a lot of love and attention, okay, it's going to really have a sense of love, security. A baby that's needs are not addressed, going back to needs, will start feeling abandoned, frightened, right? So we're shaping those subconscious experiences very early. And these subconscious these experiences then go into our subconscious and they become a belief. It is the belief that drives how we behave. And that behavior then shows up as an action. And guess what? That action creates another experience. So if we go back to our G1 Wealth Creators founders, the I, right? If we go back to this I, the initiative of I, me, mine, my purpose, right? And now I'm a child born into a wealth creator. And they're focused on making all the decisions for the business, for the family. They own it. It's their purpose. It's their direction. The siblings, the children of that owner, they're getting modeled. They're getting role modeled. What does it take to lead this business? Well, they're learning the sense of I. They're not learning the sense of us. Dad or mom's not coming to the kitchen table saying, hey, children, everybody sit down and tell me what you think of this, right? That would be creating the us. They're not doing it. They're saying, this is what you're going to do, right? So they're role modeling from the I. But those siblings need to learn to be us. Where are they going to learn to be us if they're only being role modeled I? So it's difficult. Oftentimes, by the time they become adults in the family business, this drives the power struggle, because deep in their subconscious, you know, they've seen that powerful mom or dad or parents taking control, and they feel that that's what they should be doing, taking control, versus having a discussion with the other siblings. And we haven't formed the decisions that we all together, that the us decides together, and which ones the I decides. And that's defining roles, responsibilities, and decision-making rights. So you see how tough this model is, right? So we have to bring in new experiences. We bring in new experiences from learning, from educating, from modeling, from reading, from discussion groups, right? From you know, advisors. We learn something new. This is a learning loop, right? So if we want a different behavior from our sibling or from our cousins in business or siblings in business, then we have to start creating a different experience, a different way that we are together. And we start creating these by creating, you know, rules of engagement. When we're together as siblings working on something, or we're together as cousins, and what are some of these rules that we follow to be in healthy engagement together? So we have to bring in these tools to work within. So this is why it's difficult to move from generation 1 to 3. Not only do we have to define, put form and structure around those three circles, we also have to break the beliefs, the old pattern beliefs that came from our childhood, from the way we saw the other generation behave, because that's not going to, that took them to where they are, but that's not going to take the next generation to where they need to be. And we have to do it with a respect. We have to respect what I like to call it the wise generation, those that created, grew the wealth, built the wealth, right? And then the future generation, we have to respect and do it respectfully. We have to engage them. So it takes a lot from a psychological perspective versus, oh, we just should be doing it this way. And this becomes really dealing with the language that we need to be. Ron?
Well, and I think in the center you have the word core values, which is the glue for much of this. And I'll refer back to the conversations that happened yesterday and the day before with these next generation family business leaders that we were having conversation with. I thought one of the most interesting components of their description was that the senior generations in every one of those families had stepped back enough and was repeatedly being a mentor, an encourager, a nurturer of the us, and a nurturer of the we. And they all talked about how important that was to be reminded by the seniors of why they were there. And one young man said, you know, I have one-on-one meetings with my father once a month, and my siblings do too. He's not here every day anymore, but he is reminding us to keep our eyes and our ears and our mouths on appreciation, on what we have, on how we got here, and not forget the foundations and act accordingly. But the nurturing of that by the seniors has really obviously driven significant value in those businesses. And it changed people's beliefs and behaviors and actions that helped to change them.
Absolutely.
All right, and we better watch our time.
Okay, I'll go on from here then. So we have a little activity, and we want to start with number 1. So in the chat box, like to get people chatting on this first question. Look at our 3-circle model diagram. Okay, what areas do you work well together in? Which circle do you work well together in with little conflict and stress? And so look at them and share your answers on the chat board. Which ones are going well for you?
They may relate back to the excitements and concerns.
Might relate back to the excitements and concerns. Actually, like, write them down. Draw your 3 circles on a piece of paper and say, wow, you know, these circles are going well. You know, we work well in these circles together.
Somebody said ownership.
Pardon? I see that. Yeah, somebody said ownership and management. Absolutely. Board of directors and the family council.
Oh,
yeah.
Somebody already has a family council. Or V2 businesses. Is this model okay? G2, yes.
Yes. Yes, absolutely applicable. Yes. And again, that's where it has to start evolving. Yes.
Oftentimes that's where it begins.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I always say, if it doesn't start evolving, if you can't start untangling those 3 circles, into the second generation, they will fracture and implode on one another.
Someone just said they've recently started a family council.
Very good. I like this. There are positive speckles in all areas as much as there are also challenges in all areas. Very good.
I like that.
Absolutely.
I like
Very good.
speckles.
I like speckles too. I like it. Absolutely. Yes. Let's make more speckles in each of them. I do like that. So let's talk about question number 2. Which areas do you have the most conflict, or are the areas of your greatest concern? Let's share those in the chat box. Take a moment and share some of which areas are the greater concerns for you. Which ones do you find more friction in, more stress in? Which circles? I think we have a stressless group. They must have all their circles working really well.
There comes one. Management of family and the business.
As are looking for success. Yeah, how do we get aligned on what does success look like? And we all get aligned around the vision and the success markers. Oh, management styles and strategic decisions. That's really fascinating. Yes, because we do have different styles. And how do we learn? Yeah, ownership, no equality. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, no equality. So understanding that. Merging family employees and ownership. Absolutely. Yeah. What are the rules around emerging family owners? Those are all great ones. Absolutely. So I think I want to go to the third question, and maybe this is something just to write down and reflect on. If you could change one thing, now that we've shared, you know, this very seminal 3-circle model, okay, that's like I said, it's a really seminal piece in family business practice that family business practitioners use as a successful means to get families to evolve. If you could improve one area of the 3-circle model, what one thing would you want to improve? What would your one focus area be? What would your starting point be?
Putting a family council in place.
Yeah. Oh, I see that David has a question from question 2. G1 not willfully allowing G2 to make decisions. Yeah, that's very interesting, David. How do we work with the founder, the G1 generation, to let go and lead? And it's very interesting conversation because it's helping them see that they're not letting go of the business. They have a new role. Their new role is in mentoring the family-owned enterprise. It's a different role. They're not leaving and going anywhere. We need them. We just need them in a very different way. Putting a family council into place. Yeah, absolutely. Getting your family system strengthened. Absolutely. If the family system isn't aligned, and aligned doesn't mean we all like the same thing and we all need the same thing. Aligned means we understand and respect one another's perspectives. And there are things that we do for our own small individual nuclear family and things we do for the collective whole. And how do we accept and find that balance? That's what strengthens the family system. Absolutely. Great responses. Well, I think I want to open it up, if it's okay with you, Ron, to just open it up to some questions and answers before we open it up, because I know some people might jump off depending on their timing. Just want to let you know that this deck, this slide deck, will be available if you reach out to the Association for Family Business Enterprise, to Antoinette or to Joe, that that deck will be there, that they can share it with you. Our contact information is at the end of that, so how to get a hold of us if you have more questions. And just to let you know, we'll be giving a larger presentation. I'll be giving an in-person presentation at the next AFBE business breakfast briefing that will take a deeper dive into this. We've just started to scratch the surface. So that next business briefing will have a deeper dive in person on it. Okay, with that, I'm going to stop the share and just open it up to the audience to ask us questions. It can be around a 3-circle model. It can be about something different within your family enterprise. So I invite you to take that opportunity.
Oh, wow.
There's us 3. I don't know if the stop video or how the moderator's doing it to let others in. I know we're showing 39 participants, so we can't really see anybody. So
that's great. That's great. You know, while people are thinking, I would remind them there are so many resources available today to help family businesses. You know, we have a magazine here in the States. I assume it goes worldwide, called Family Business Magazine. There are lots and lots of books now that have been written about family business and family enterprise. Gene has a book too, I think. But you know, it's possible to educate yourselves. So we have any recommendation for books? Oh my goodness. Generation to Generation is a good book. Gene, off the top of my head, that caught me flat-footed. Look up.
Yeah, I have one of the books I like is Any Recommendation on Books. So if you're really struggling in the family, you know, and conflict in the family and trying to get around alignment, I think the book Deconstructing Conflict by a colleague of ours, Understanding Family Business, Shared Wealth and Power by Doug Bromell and Blair Tripp. I think that's a very good book. One of the things that we do on our Positively People website, we do have a list of resources that if you click onto them, you'll get right into some really good resources. Absolutely. Steps to start a family council. Absolutely. There's some good literature on family councils, creating a good family constitution. Again, if you reach out to us at our website, we can definitely send you actually the publications that we think are the best to get. The Harvard Business Review has a book, really great book. I brought a few copies. I have one that I'm going to raffle off when I give a talk for AFBE called the Family Business Handbook, a collection of Harvard Business Review conversations and case studies. It's very good. So yes. What are your thoughts on how and when to open up family businesses to non-family members? I'm not sure, Dawn, are you referring to bringing non-family executives into the business or bringing them into the boardroom? Maybe you can let me know a little bit more there to understand that a little bit more. Yes,
the
into the business. Absolutely. You know, I think it's really important because if you, so again, from the corporate governance side, okay, the business needs to sustain and it needs to grow and it needs to continue to generate wealth, right? There's more, I always say, you know, there's more mouths to feed. There's more babies getting born, you know, the system evolves. I just finished working with a big family of automotive that owns a lot of automotive dealerships. So when I started working with them, you know, the family size was 32 people. By the time I ended working with them, we were over 50 people. And I didn't work with them that long. There were just a lot of marriages and there were a lot of newborn babies. So in a very short period of time, we had grown another 18 family members. Well, that's more wealth to be distributed, our expectations, more needs to be met, right? And so you look at the family business, not all family members are number one cut out to work in the family business. That's not their passion. If it's not your passion, don't work in the family business. You can be supportive. You can have a different role in the family enterprise. You can participate in the board. You might be a great brand ambassador. There's so many places. But again, you have to look at it from the lens. You want the best people in the right roles in the working in the family business, because they're going to have to meet those strategic objectives and key performances so that money flows. So you really want to bring in the best. And if the best is from outside, the biggest challenge that you're going to have is going to be a culture fit. Like one of the things we do is we do a lot of psychometric assessments with our families on helping match the right non-family member to the culture and the values and the belief systems of the family, because that's critical. You bring in a wrong non-family member that is not aligned on the core values and your beliefs, they can be very destructive to the family.
There was a question about, or a comment about, someone said as a result of today, they might start their own family business that is difficult between G1 and 2. I think that's a very good comment, because there are times when it makes sense to go it out, to move along. It's not always the healthiest thing to stay in some spot that cannot seem to get better, no matter what people try. So yes, I would say to someone, there's plenty of reasons at times to move along and change the dynamic by putting yourself in a different place. The family business may not be the place that you thrive.
Yeah. And
Right.
it's and sometimes we'll call it pruning the tree. We need to separate to grow, right? It's like a rose bush, right? Sometimes you have to prune it to come back stronger. The thing is, you can do it in a very healthy way that you don't traumatize and leave the family system traumatized and fractured. There are ways to do it that are successful in pruning your tree.
And there's a question about succession from Gen 1 to Gen 2. That's a pretty complicated conversation. It is having the conversation. I always tell people that the most important thing about succession in the first generation is keeping the conversation going, because people tend to avoid it, and it has to come up. And sometimes the place to go might be to Gen 1's advisors. They have people they already trust that can be a resource to helping succession along in that way. We got one more thing down there, Gene. You want a great bit, great people in the right role for the business to grow and ensure culture fit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Make sure you have the right people in the right seat on the bus and they fit your culture that you want for your family business. It's your family enterprise. It's your brand. It's your family's reputation. Absolutely. And I just, you know, one of the things is I like to change the language going back to the question that was on succession, right? One of the things that I find is I don't like to use the word succession planning because it's succession planning means, you know, I'm in, you're out. Dad, you're out, I'm in, right? It's not succession. Okay, it doesn't have to be, it's continuity. We're writing a wonderful novel, and hopefully we'll have many chapters. Each decade is another chapter, right? So it's a continuity. That senior generation is going to start writing a new chapter. What's that chapter going to look like? Then each generation has to write a new chapter. So it's continuity. How do we do this? How do we continue to evolve it? So I
think we're good.
No, I think we have Hussein trying to say something. I'm sorry. You want to repeat that question for us?
Yeah,
We're having a difficult time hearing you. If you could speak up.
Well, he's on mute now.
Or if you would like to put it into the chat box, maybe that might help.
No question. Sorry.
Okay, no problem.
Jean, it's 10 o'clock.
I think it's time. So Antoinette and Joe, do you want to close this out with some closing remarks from the two of you? We've really enjoyed our time.
Yes, Ron and Jean, first of all, thank you very much for a very insightful talk. For the audience, thank you very much for staying on board and participating. We appreciate the time you've taken. And lastly, if you want more information about the Association of Family Business Enterprises, you can visit our website at afbkenya.org. Jean and Ron, I think with your permission, we will share the slides to the audience. And at the end of the slides, you have both Jean and Ron's contacts. If you wish to reach out to them directly or through us, we can always put you in touch. Thank you very much for everybody for taking part, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Good evening.
Good evening. Take care. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thanks, Jean.
Bye.